Hello Scouts, it's Mr. Kugler, and we've got the 12-inch Dutch oven preheating, and today we're going to make the classic dump cake. And I'm going to show you a couple little ideas that may make that dump cake a little over the top from what you're accustomed to. So we're going to start off today by putting in a Dutch oven liner. And a Dutch oven liner, you don't have to use it, but the reality is that this dump cake I'm making is going to be eaten by Mrs. Kugler and me. And we can't eat all this in one sitting. So by doing this in a liner, I'll be able to remove it from the Dutch oven and we'll be able to enjoy this for days to come from the liner here. But it's also a liner, which is made specifically for Dutch ovens, is a great tool to use to be able to cut down on your cleanup. Now, why would cleanup be a problem? Well, there may be times where maybe it's a camporee and you're cooking something in the morning and you want to be done quickly because you have to go on to events. Or maybe you're in an area that doesn't have a plentiful supply of water, so cleanup can be a challenge. So those are some of the basic reasons why you may want to use a liner. So let's get it set up. Because my Dutch oven is preheated or preheating, I'm going to need to use my gloves here to be able to do this. So I'll remove my lid and I'm going to take the Dutch oven and I'm going to put the liner in the Dutch oven. Then I'm going to carefully put the lid down and I'm going to press down with the lid lifter and I'm going to carefully go around the perimeter and I want to roll over this edge of the foil. And one of the reasons I have to be careful where the bail is, make sure the bail comes up above. But what I'm trying to do is minimize the chances that foil is going to act like a trough and trap ash there that's going to get into my cake. So I'm just going to roll this over. And holding down on the lid, I'm just going to make sure that my bail, that loop goes up and down. And I know it's a little tricky here with the lid preheated doing this, but by holding it down, it helps keep that nice firm connection to the Dutch oven. And then I give it a couple spins just to make sure that it is tight to the lid and we're not going to have a lot of air escaping. So before I go and open up my Dutch oven and start putting in ingredients, let me talk a little bit about what goes into a dump cake and why it's called a dump cake. We're going to start, first we're going to spray down the sides a little bit with the oil, not critical. We're going to dump a can. This is a 29-ounce can of sliced peaches with the juices and syrup right into the Dutch oven. After that, we're going to take and we're going to add our cake mix. And I'm going to pull it out of the packet. I'm going to make sure there's no lumps in it. And I'm just going to dump it on the top of it, hence the name dump cake. Then I'm going to dump or pour a can of root beer right over the top. You could use Sprite. I love root beer, and I actually get a better grade root beer. I don't cheap out on this. I get a better flavor one because that flavor of the root beer really comes through in the cake. I'm going to give it a slight stir to make sure that everything is fully incorporated. Then I'll add some pads of butter to the top of it, and I'm also going to sprinkle it with some cinnamon and granulated sugar that I have prepared. So let's get going, putting together our dump cake. So we'll start by removing the lid of the Dutch oven, putting it on a lid stand here. I'm going to give it that spray down on the inside. And we'll start with the can of peaches. And we'll dump our can of peaches right in the Dutch oven. Earlier, I leveled out my Dutch oven table to make sure that I had a nice flat surface because I wanted to make sure that my ingredients laid out and leveled out to an even thickness within the Dutch oven. That's very important when you're doing Dutch oven cooking with something that has like a batter. So we'll move on to the cake. This is just a standard cake mix, a yellow cake mix. And again, I'm going to work it to make sure there's no lumps. Last thing we want to do is have a bite into a pocket of batter that didn't get incorporated. And don't try opening the bag like this. Take and use a knife to open that package. And then we're going to take and just dump it in the Dutch oven. So with our cake mix in, we're going to take and we're going to add the root beer soda. So now I'm going to take a spoon and incorporate this all together. Carbonation in the soda is really starting to fluff up this cake and give it that lift that it needs, so it's just not some solid mass of something that more resembles wet hot sawdust. So with my ingredients nicely incorporated and my spoon safely in the box to cut down on making a mess, I'm going to take, and before I put the butter on, I have some cinnamon and sugar mixed up. Now I like using these bottles that have the holes in the top for sprinkling things, but you certainly could use a Ziploc bag and prepare it ahead of time at home. We'll take and we'll give it a dusting. Now, before I handle the butter, I'll put on a glove. Certainly could use a spoon, but that's one more thing to wash. And I'm just going to take, and this is about a half a stick of butter. Just going to evenly spread out these butter pads across the top of my cake. And assembling the cake doesn't get any easier than that. We're going to put our lid, using our lid lifter, back on our Dutch oven. We're going to give it a slight turn. Make sure it's seated well. And we'll let this cake cook, and you'll be amazed on how well, once it's fully baked, that it comes out. So to help ensure even baking, every 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so, I'm going to come over to my Dutch oven. I'm going to take and I'm going to spin the lid 1/3 of a turn one direction. I typically go clockwise. Then I'm going to pick up on the bail of the Dutch oven and spin it counterclockwise about 1/3 of a turn and ensure that it's seated well on the Dutch oven table. And I'll do that every 10 or 15 minutes, as I mentioned. The other thing that I'll do is I'll come over periodically, just check the temperature. And if I notice that I can get my hand too close, that the temperature has dropped off, I've got a chimney over off camera with additional briquettes in it that I always want to have enough to get me through the baking process. And occasionally I may come through and nest in between these briquettes that are on here some additional heat and feel it and try to get it even. And I'll check and do the same thing on the bottom. Because our cake is in direct contact with the cast iron, I may back off a little bit on the heat on the bottom as we get towards the end of the baking process. Well, Scouts, it's been about 45 minutes. Your baking time is going to depend upon how attentive you are to adding coals, certainly how windy it is. There are some tricks that you could do, like these Dutch oven tables typically have a windshield around them to help prevent that, but that'll all impact your cooking time. But I can tell you that standing right here, I can smell the root beer and the peaches. So I'm pretty sure it's done. And we got a paring knife. We're gonna remove this lid and let's see what our dump cake looks like. So that looks great. It's got some little, look like volcanic eruptions going on there with some bubbling up of the juices from down below. I'm just going to go in with the knife and I could push it aside and I could see how it's cooked all the way down through. That soda really acts as a leavening agent to help lift up that cake mix. Because remember, we don't have oil or eggs or anything in our cake mix or water. We're using the soda and the juices from the peaches. So now the true test is to take a spoon and let's see what it tastes like. Look at that. It's all fluffy all the way through. I have to be careful because I think I'm going to run the risk of burning my mouth on this. Wow. Here we have a dump cake that lived up to its name. We dumped in a can of peaches, and we dumped in a cake mix, and we dumped in a root beer soda. We stirred it all together. We sprinkled some cinnamon and sugar mixture over the top of it. We put about a half a stick of butter on the top. What could be better than that? We let it bake for about 40-45 minutes in our 12-inch regular Dutch oven using a Dutch oven foil liner. And we have a delicious, actually beautiful dump cake that would be the hit around the campfire of any troop outing. So get out there, have some fun around the campfire with your members of your patrol. And most of all, get outside and have some fun in the great outdoors.